There are some vegans who don't care if they have fabulous health, and there are others who know that it is so critical, both for living long and doing good, but also so that people who haven't thought about this before don't have to think first of, oh my gosh, I wonder if I'll get sick. Our guest today is going to tell us that there is a way to live beneath this plant-based umbrella that means not just not getting sick, but feeling amazing and hedging our bets against the tough stuff. Hi, everybody. I'm Victoria Moran, and you are listening to the Main Street Vegan Podcast, where we are all about vitality, spirituality, and compassion. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today and with my absolutely fabulous guest, Terri Chrisman. Terri is all about fabulous health. That's the name of her company. That's the name of her new book, Fabulous Health, A Simple Plan to Get Well and Stay Well. Terri is a board-certified nutritionist with the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. She speaks, she podcasts, she writes, and she lives what she talks about. So welcome, Terri.
Thank you so much for that gorgeous introduction, Victoria. It's good
Well,
to be
it's
here.
It is wonderful to have you. We didn't know each other before a couple of weeks ago, and we met through an old-fashioned phone call. So now it's fun to be able to see you as well as hear you. And listeners, if you listen on one of the podcast platforms, that's really cool. But you can now also listen on YouTube. So my YouTube channel is currently called Victoria Moran NYC. That might change, but that's where you can find us. And then you can see Terri and see the picture of her book. So, Terri, you address a group of illnesses called non-communicable. So, what are they and why are they important for people to be aware of?
So, a non-communicable disease is one that you can't catch from somebody else. So, it's not like a virus, and a non-communicable disease is another way of saying a lifestyle-based disease. So, we're talking about things such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, rheumatoid arthritis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, reproductive problems like PCOS. So, there's a whole bunch of human diseases that have infiltrated the populations over the last, I'm going to say, 60 to 100 years. They've just been getting worse and worse and worse as time goes on. And they seem to be the normality for an aging population now rather than the exception. So particularly things like heart disease and diabetes are the two big ones. And cancer, of course.
This is so interesting to me because I grew up in the 1950s and 60s, and my dad was a doctor. So he was ENT was his specialty, but he did everything because in those days, the doctor could set your broken arm, deliver your baby, whatever you needed. And I helped in his office. I had a kind of little Florence Nightingale thing going on very, very early in life. And people were simply not as sick. And people tell me, oh, you didn't know you were a little kid. I was a very observant little
Mm.
kid. There were two very obese people that we knew in my parents' huge circles of friends. People got old, they died, but they didn't spend years and years and years being ill. So,
Mm.
what happened? What did we do?
Oh, that's a really big question. But I'm going to put the blame on food companies not telling the truth. And I what I mean by that is if you when you were like 5 or 6 and you went to the bakery and look, I wasn't vegan when I was a child. We went to the bakery. The bakery probably made a cake with butter, eggs, flour, sugar. That's probably what the bakery made the cake with. And that's not the healthiest thing on the planet to eat, but you probably only have one cake for your birthday and maybe one cake for your dad's birthday or your mum's birthday. So in a little nuclear family, you might have 4 cakes a year. Well, that's my experience anyway. But now, if you go to the bakery and you buy a cake, the list of ingredients is this long. There's a lot of chemicals in there that we don't even understand what they are. The flour is not organic anymore, it's all been sprayed by pesticides. The eggs are from chickens that are being subject to torture. So there's stress hormones and all sorts of nasty things in them. There's just lots of junk in the cake. And then a cake is not a special occasion thing anymore. People don't eat 4 cakes a year, they eat 40 cakes a year. So if you look at some of the statistics on things like sugar consumption and red meat consumption, things like that, the statistics go, whoops, wrong side. The statistics go up like this, right? So back when we were kids, I think, I don't know the exact numbers, but it was really tiny amount of sugar that we were eating, and now it's like buckets and buckets of sugar. I should have paid attention and maybe got some stats for you in advance. But there's no secret that we're eating a lot more junk. We're eating a lot more processed foods. We're not exercising as much as we used to. Everything seems to be sedentary. Things like streaming services and stuff like that mean that people are just sitting on their couches watching endless Netflix or whatever, when maybe they used to go and walk the dog, or they used to run out and play a sport or something like that. So things like this are happening. And unfortunately, the population as a whole is getting fatter. And being fat is a precursor to all these other diseases as well. Not even thinking about the chemicals and whatnot that are in the food that are causing gut disturbances and things like Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis and IBS. And but people are getting heart disease earlier, people are getting diabetes earlier, people are getting cancer because of the things in the food. So I'm going to blame the food.
Okay, that's a good one to blame. And remember how Dr. McDougall, rest his soul, used to say, it's not diet and lifestyle, it's the food.
Yeah.
And, and I really believe it's diet and lifestyle, because I know that stress and some other things can also be killers. But far and away in the Western world right now, I do think we're looking at a whole lot of foodborne illness. So
Yes.
you cite personal tragedy as the impetus for writing this book. So tell us about your family history, why this information is so important to you.
Absolutely, Victoria. So, my dad's side of the family, he had 3 sisters, sorry, 2 sisters, and he was the baby of the family. And they were both obese, and all their children were obese. So, when I was a little kid, my cousins were young adults and adults. So, they were in their early 20s when I was a little kid. And they were all always on diets. Nobody could help them get their weight under control. They all had high blood pressure, and I don't know any other complications that they may have had, but it was always a struggle for my dad to maintain health. And I do believe that there might be some genetic component to that, because I, even as a nutritionist, eating as healthy as I can, exercising all the time, it's always an effort for me to maintain, optimal weight and fitness and keep my blood pressure low and all that kind of stuff. So, notwithstanding that, they didn't have any information. So, they were always on Weight Watchers or weighing and measuring their food or something like that. And obesity was just a puzzle that they could not crack. And my dad, he tried really hard with the information that he had, but he also believed that a meal was not a meal unless it had red meat on the plate. He believed that eggs were healthy for you. He believed that milk was healthy for you. He didn't mind buying white bread. He preferred brown bread, as he called it, because he thought it was healthier. But he worked within the parameters that he had. Now, he had his massive heart attack in 1992. So back then, the medical profession did not really understand that lifestyle played a really big part in this. They just thought he was dealt a bad deck of cards, and that it wouldn't have mattered what he did, that his body was just basically working against him. And funnily enough, back in 1990, Dr. Dean Ornish did a study and he found that lifestyle has everything to do with the progression of atherosclerosis. He did this fantastic study where he put some people on a whole food plant-based diet and other interventions such as stress reduction and community and exercise and all the things that make up a healthy lifestyle. And then he stuck a bunch of other patients on the what we call the standard care. So that was the American Heart Association diet, and they were doing all the things that was what we call best practice at the time. And the people who were on the plant-based diet intervention with the exercise and looking after their health, they reversed some of their heart disease. Now, these are people with already heart disease and comorbidities. And what he was looking at the amount of angina. And angina is the pain that you feel when you exert yourself. Maybe you've got heart disease and you don't really realize that you've got it. But when you walk up and down stairs, all of a sudden you get this compression in your chest and it hurts, or any kind of exertion. And that's because the diameter of the arteries is small because it's clogged up with plaque, which is called atherosclerosis, and that's what causes a heart attack. So the people on the plant-based diet, their arteries opened up, they let more blood through, so they had less angina and they were getting better. And the people who did the standard best practice at the time, they got worse. So I say in my book, I don't know about you, but if I went to the doctor and I had heart disease, I'd want them to tell me how to get better, not worse, right? So if the standard practice at the time was making people worse, that was the practice all over the world. And I'm sure you know, Victoria, but people maybe don't understand that just because Dean Ornish did this study and proved that a plant-based diet was beneficial to reverse heart disease, doesn't mean that every single doctor in the universe just went, oh my goodness, that's fantastic. Let's just put everybody on a plant-based diet because that's going to fix everything. No, there was backlash. This is a single study, doesn't mean anything. I mean, this is just ridiculous. And certainly I was living in Australia and I did some research for the book, and I found out that in 1992, when my dad died, the Australian Cardiology Society actively rejected it and said, nah, it's not true. So we're just going to keep with the status quo. So look, I blamed my dad for a lot of things, erroneously, of course, because I thought, well, why didn't he do better? Why didn't he eat a plant-based diet? Why didn't he exercise more? Why didn't he, do all the things, right? But he was doing all the things that he thought he was supposed to do. You can't change your behavior if you don't know what to do. He was never told, hey, maybe less meat on your plate. You know what I mean? Maybe those eggs aren't so great for you. Maybe stop with the whole cream milk with lunch, he'd have like 3 ham sandwiches and cheese and a big glass of milk like this big. And then he'd have 2 oranges and think he was being healthy. And so I've got over blaming him, which is a terrible thing, right? When you think about it, my poor dad is no longer with us. And I thought it was his fault. It wasn't his fault. And over the years of studying and being with patients and clients and actually having a genetic predisposition to heart disease myself, I'm a lot kinder, and I'm a lot kinder to him because he did the best, and unfortunately, it wasn't enough. And all the people before him who've suffered heart attacks and died of heart disease, I have faith that people do their very, very best, but maybe they just don't know. So that's why I wrote the book, because I want people to know.
Exactly. And thank you. Thank you so very much for doing that. I remember when preliminary findings from the Ornish study came out in probably 1988. And I was already vegan, and I remember thinking, well, we may have a ways to go with leather shoes, but the diet thing has been solved. I literally thought that the world would be plant-based in a year, naively. And it's still being fought. And now, of course, we have people talking about, eggs are so fabulous and butter was back, years ago, and now it's back double with the carnivore diet. So all of this information and misinformation just keeps going round and round and round. How can we help people understand what is science-based, what is factual, what has evidence behind it versus, oh gosh, I just went on this diet and I'm doing great.
Yeah, stay off social media. I just
Good
took
luck
all the
with that.
social apps off my phone today for like the 50th time.
You did
I
what?
have a love I took all my social media apps off my phone. I have a love-hate relationship with social media. And that's probably, why I'm not Insta famous because I just look, I don't expect anybody to read all the science because science sometimes is conflicting and it's tedious. It's not very interesting stuff to read. But if you find people who have read the science, so like Dr. Greger, for example, from nutritionfacts.org, he has read the science, and not just him, he has a team of volunteers who read the science and then distills it in such a way that it's for the layperson to understand. This study said this, and these were its limitations, and these were its findings. And I've done that in my book too. I've taken specific, really important studies and I've said, hey, the Harvard University did this awesome study whereby they followed 500 men for 75 years. Now, that's a serious study. And they found that the greatest predictor of longevity and happiness was connection to others. So this is like people can comprehend a study like that. They're like, "What? What do you mean? What do you mean? The greatest predictor of longevity and happiness is connection, not diet, not exercise. It's connection." So then that's a really interesting pillar in a healthy lifestyle that a lot of the times people like me, nutritionists, we all focus on the plant-based diet. And it's one out of many things that we can do to make a healthy life. So look, if you're confused and you want to go do the carnivore diet, just stop right there because it will kill you. And that's unequivocal. But try and find people to follow that have read the science and can distill it in easy ways for you to read. So, look, I'm standing in front, underneath me is my bookcase, and I've got books by Dr. Neil Barnard, Dr. Wal Bilshewitz, Dr. Dean Ornish, Dr. McDougall. I've got them all here because these are doctors that have read the science and then they've put their information into a book so that the layperson can read it and they can make changes to their diet. So, my advice number one is get off social media and buy my book.
Okay, the good advice, good advice. And the book is Fabulous Health by Terri Chrisman. Yeah, it is so interesting to me that in a field that is supposed to be science, and I don't know that much about geology or nuclear physics, so I don't know how much argument is going on there. But I would assume that about the basic scientific principles, things like gravity, that's pretty well decided, and there's not a lot of argument. But in the science of nutrition, it's much more like a religion or a political stance, something of that nature, where opinion has so much to do with it. And I wonder, for example, we've all heard of this Dr. Gundry, Stephen Gundry, who's out there. He can't stand beans. There are articles all over debunking him, and I don't just mean plant-based doctors, but the Harvard T.H. Chan School of Public Health has an article about how what the lectins that are in legumes are what he doesn't like, and Harvard is saying lectin-free diet more risky than beneficial. And yet people aren't seeing that. They're seeing like, oh, this guy says beans are bad. And you know what? I had a whole lot of baked beans once and I got gas. And so there, let's just put that together. And so to communicate kindly in an understanding way with people who have heard information that is just oftentimes nuts, it's a little bit challenging. How do you do it? What's your communication secret?
Yes, it is challenging, but I do like a quote from Plato, which is, you can't argue with an idiot. And what that means is it doesn't matter how smart you are, even if you have all the right answers, if somebody erroneously believes something with no knowledge, they're on their high horse. They put their flag in the sand, and there's no amount of you changing their opinion. So I think, number one, if somebody wants to fight with me about it, I don't want to fight. I'm just not going to fight about it. But if somebody says, hey, listen, I heard this Dr. G, and he says beans are bad, is that true? Then the door is open, because then they're saying, I had a bad experience with beans and he tells me those lectins are terrible. And so is that real? And then I get the opportunity to put in the different opinion and the different facts, which are, no, it's not real, and that beans are high in fiber. And if your gut hasn't had them before, you're going to have a little problem because those gut bacteria won't be able to handle them, and they're going to be making this gas. And yeah, you're going to get gas, but maybe you need to eat a little beans and then a little bit more beans. But also, let's not be reductionist. Let's not have a fast food diet and add some beans into it, because your gut won't handle that either. We have to think about the human body as a complete system, and just you need to fuel it with all the things, not just the beans. So there needs to be whole plant foods such as fruit and vegetables, nuts and seeds, whole grains, herbs and spices, and legumes as part of a healthy diet. When people isolate one thing and say it's either good or it's bad, they're not looking at the whole picture. We are just one system and we need all the things. What we don't need is highly processed food, and we don't need animal products, and we don't need stress. So there's things that we don't need excess medications in our foods and things like that. But if if we look at the body as a whole, then we understand that, you know what, we have to treat it a little bit better by having a bit of all the whole food plant-based foods. And but yeah, as far as communication, if somebody asks a question, I will answer it and try and be as objective as possible. But if they come at me, I'm not interested in, because you can't win that argument.
It's true. And it's not really about winning an argument, it's about changing the world. And
Mm,
I think that I believe in something that I call attraction activism. Some people have shortened that to attractivism. And again, we don't want to set ourselves up for being superhuman. I mean, we've lost several of our plant-based greats in the last couple of years. You know, this
mm,
is not the key to immortality, but it
mm.
is the key to hedging your bets against some of the really bad stuff and having your best possible life. So you've got 6 pillars of a healthy lifestyle in fabulous health, and I would just love to know every single six and help us get those as part of our life if they're not already.
Well, the 6 pillars are not mine. I borrowed them from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine. And these are the 6 pillars that they teach to all their practitioners, allied health professionals, and doctors, to help them help their patients live a preventative life rather than a reactive life with medication. So the first one is a plant-based diet. And you and I and your audience know that, that's fantastic for human health. And there's no studies at all saying that a plant-based diet will contribute to lifestyle disease. Like there's just none. There's a lot of studies saying that will help lifestyle disease and help you prevent it and maybe sometimes even reverse it. But there is not a study on the planet that says that it's detrimental. So that's number one. The second one is exercise. And it doesn't have to be going to the gym every day. It can be walking the dog. It can be dancing in your lounge room. It can be walking up and down the stairs instead of taking the elevator. It can be parking in the next block instead of parking at the front of the store. So just getting physical activity and movement into your day. The next one is stress reduction. So stress reduction is a hard one because everybody's life is stressful. And sometimes we can't alleviate the stress. We might be able to walk away from the stress for a very short period of time and regain our thoughts and do deep breathing techniques and maybe set aside 5 minutes of meditation a day or whatever it is. But if you've got stress in your life that you can't disassociate yourself from, then there are ways to learn how to react to the stress. So instead of letting everything get to you personally, maybe taking a step back and saying, okay, this is happening. It's causing me stress. What can I do to make that less stressful for me? Or how can I change the situation so that it is not a stress? So it's about working out what you can do as your reaction to stress rather than getting rid of it altogether. The other one is getting some sleep, restorative sleep. We need about 7 to 8 hours of sleep per night. And disrupted sleep has been found to be linked to early onset dementia. So it's really important to get nice restorative sleep. And there's a few things in the book that you can do to ensure that. And one of them is get off that. Get off the phone. Stop looking at those apps. Blue light stimulates your brain and keeps you awake. Reading is good. Being in a cool room, having a regular bedtime routine, all these things. I'm not going to give away all the tricks and tips because you won't buy my book then. Get basically finding ways to help you get better sleep. We also have the avoidance of risky substances, and I'm talking about drugs such as alcohol, cocaine, marijuana, and prescription drugs that are not prescribed to you. So, I don't know, barbiturates or whatever. So if you can stay away from those, and look, I know that people don't necessarily have the ability to get off those drugs by me just saying, hey, stop drinking or stop, snorting coke or whatever it is. That getting help is really, really important, and realizing that every time you use the drug, and I put alcohol in the same bucket, it's damaging your health. So seeking help from a professional organization or a professional therapist who can help you do that, because I'm not qualified to do that. I can just tell you that, you need to go and get some help. I can't help people do that. And the other one is connection to others that I talked about before, having community, having good relationships, not being alone. Loneliness is a risk factor for early death. And, you think about things like, being overweight, not exercising, and having heart disease, they're risk factors. Yeah, but so's being lonely. And a lot of people don't understand this. So finding your people. And I say in the book, look, you don't have to get out and join a basketball team, right? Because maybe, you're too old for that, or you're not interested in basketball, or your knees, not working or whatever. You can find people online. There's a lot of clubs and groups that are really positive online spaces. Just because it's social media doesn't mean it's a bad experience. Look, if you're I'm into gardening. Yeah. So I'm in gardening groups. There's nothing but positivity in those gardening groups. I have my own Facebook group. There's nothing but positivity in the healthy lifestyle group that I have inside that group. There's not one person in the people that I have in the group that says nasty things or makes nasty comments because as a administrator, let me tell you, one nasty comment, you don't even get a excuse me, you're gone. So those are the six pillars. And if you nail those six things, and it sounds like a lot, but really it's just healthy living. If you nail those six things, your risk of non-communicable lifestyle disease goes down exponentially. So,
And that's very exciting. Very
yeah.
exciting. So, changing habits is hard enough, but we're doing it within a social milieu. We're doing it with families. We're doing it with people who largely do not live this way. And we're still the odd person out in most social situations. We've got the holidays coming up, and so many people who eat this way just dread not only the heart-rending situation of seeing a dead bird on the middle of the table, but just being with people who don't understand, who tease, who make fun, who challenge. So you've got some ideas in your book, and I know from your experience working with people, what do we do with the rest of the world?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. Look, I've been plant-based for a long time. I've been vegetarian for like 40 years and vegan for 10 years. And I know you've been vegan for a lot longer than me, Victoria. And I think by the time you get to this point, you just don't care. Like,
Exactly. But other people care
like other people's
deeply,
opinions that,
deeply.
I have no time for that. And I just don't care. And I don't engage in that. But I know that for people who are trying to change, sorry, my earphone's falling out. For people who are trying to change and they're not in that confident position that you and I are in, I find that deflection is really good because it's not your job to change somebody else. Your job is to follow your own path. And if your path is to not eat the bird and to eat healthy and try and be a healthier person, you just have to be responsible for yourself. And so I've got in the book a few little tips and tricks, like when somebody tries to be a food pusher, oh, won't you have some of blah, 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 whatever it is. Can't even think of something that I don't want to eat. And you can say, oh, no, thanks. I've just already had a plate and I'm just going over there now to get some more. Right. And you don't have to tell them what more you're getting. You might be getting carrots, sticks, and hummus. Who cares? None of their business. But, oh, no, thanks. Or you say things like, oh, I'm completely stuffed. Hey, that's a really nice dress. Where did you get that? Right. So you answer their question and then instantly flip it onto a completely different subject.
Oh,
Oh,
that's
where'd you go for your
brilliant.
holiday? I hear you got a new job. Tell me about that. You know what I mean? So instead of feeling like people are coming at you, oh, won't you have some turkey? You don't even have to say, I don't want to eat turkey. You can say, I've already had my dinner, thank you, and I am full already. Now that doesn't say to them, I didn't eat any turkey. You just say, I've already had enough and I don't need any more, thanks. Or, I might go get some later or whatever. It depends on how you feel. So I would never say to somebody, I'll go get some later because I don't want to give anybody the impression that I'm going to eat some turkey, but I'd probably go for the look. I'm so full. It's been a fantastic, lunch or whatever. Fantastic Thanksgiving. Hey, who made that awesome stuffing with those cranberries? That was delicious. And that maybe one of your cousins or something made it and they told you it was going to be vegan, right? So you can do things like that. And deflection is the best strategy as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you so much.
And
And
compliments.
how about people who feel that they've already tried everything, that they have been up and down that healthy living merry-go-round a dozen times and back again, and then we're saying, excuse me, here's something else. Or they may have actually tried this before, because I'm running into this more and more, that people did try some earlier iteration of something plant-based, and they say it didn't work for them. And it's always so interesting to explore that because very often what didn't work was social, or what didn't work was they just weren't eating enough and they got
Mm.
hungry. So, what do you say to the person who might just be too tired to consider trying one more time?
Yes. So, look, it's hard to tell a person what to do, but it would require a long conversation because I tried that and it didn't work. Well, what did you try? Did you try going to Burger King and getting a plant-based burger and then realize that you didn't lose 20 pounds in the weekend? Like this, I did that and it didn't work. Or, you tried plant-based ice cream and plant-based cheese and plant-based cookies and you expected that you'd instantly get healthier. Well, swapping a plant-based version of an unhealthy non-plant-based version is not going to improve your health at all. And I think that people underestimate the need to eat whole plant foods. I think what's happened is people have got away from cooking for themselves. They've got away from understanding exactly what ingredients are, which ones have protein, which ones have fat, which ones have carbohydrates. And there needs to be a little bit of learning going on, not just doing, learning. So you've got to go, okay, well, peanut butter on toast is plant based, but it's also 600 calories. And then in 20 minutes, I'm hungry again. So I go to Starbucks and get a Frappuccino. Oh, it's oat milk. But you know what I mean? It's got 75 grams of sugar in it because they put all that caramel sauce in it. It's learning. And look, I know that a plant-based donut is not healthy for me. And I know that if I eat those, I'm not going to lose any weight. So there needs to be a little bit of understanding of nutrition and to know that there is a certain group of foods that are really healthy for you and that will help you reach your goals. And they are whole plant foods. So your lowest calorie foods on the planet also happen to be your healthiest foods, and that's your dark green leafy vegetables. And I have dark green leafy vegetables every day. I grow them and I grow so many of them that I can't eat them all. So I dehydrate them and then I blend them into a powder. And then I've got my own homegrown organic greens powder that I throw in everything.
Wow, that's
I'll
impressive.
throw it in my smoothies and I'll throw it in my oatmeal and I'll throw it in my soup. And I know that I'm getting those nutrients for you know, virtually no calories. But if I ate whole grain bread and peanut butter on toast all the time, I'd probably weigh another 20 pounds, because even though they're plant-based and there's nothing wrong with peanut butter unless you're allergic to peanuts. We'll say almond butter, for example. It's a healthy fat, it's got some protein in it, but it should be eaten rarely and in small portions. And that's what I've tried to do in my book is I've tried to let people give them enough information so that they can make the choices that are going to work for them. And I'll give you a spoiler. The spoiler is you want to eat a ton of your low calorie, high nutrient dense foods. And those are your non starchy vegetables, your fruits, and your starchy vegetables, and your uh, legumes and your whole grains. So if you eat those four groups of food and herbs and spices, I kind of put them in, things like, cilantro and parsley and basil and turmeric and shove it all in because we want it to taste delicious. And stay away from your high calorie plant-based foods, which are your bread, your pasta, your nut butters, your avocados, if you want to lose weight, right? If you don't want to lose weight and you just want to be healthy, eat those things, right? So they're healthy for you. But when people say, I tried, well, I was still cooking with oil and I was making my pasta sauce and I put these processed meaty crumbles in it. Look, I will never say that people who are just transitioning shouldn't do that. I think you should do that. I think you should get out of the beef and into the meaty crumbles, but also recognize that those meaty crumbles are highly processed. And if weight loss is your goal, maybe you're not going to get some weight loss from there, but maybe it's just the first step. And then when you feel confident, then you're going to go to the lentils in your pasta sauce. Then you're going to go for not using the oil. So it's a step by step process, but there does need to be knowledge. And I think that's where people just think, oh, I used to eat, a chicken breast and some fries, and now I want to eat plant-based, and oh, all I got left is the fries. Well, that's not how it works. You just don't take things away without putting something back in.
Exactly. And something delicious and fabulous. So, even though I'm not much of a foodie myself, I so admire all the wonderful chefs and recipe creators who really can. I mean, this food just in its natural state, talking about like a bowl of apples, there's nothing more beautiful. But to really be able to put out a spread that is cruelty-free, health promoting, and really, really good. So one of the biggest compliments I ever had early in my journey with this, I had a party and this guy was leaving with his wife and he said, "Well, you really did it. I had mapped out where the nearest McDonald's was because I was sure I would be wanting that when I left here, but I'm not."
That's
So there's
fantastic.
a lot to be said for knowing what to do with this wonderful food. And there's a lot to be said for knowing good people like Terri Chrisman and reading wonderful books such as Fabulous Health, A Simple Plan to Get Well and Stay Well. It hit #1 in 10 categories in multiple countries on Amazon since it was launched this past summer. It also won a bronze medal in the Global Book Awards Health, Exercise, and Fitness category. So that is pretty cool. So, Terri, I'm going to make a few announcements, and then when we come back, I want to know what you do in a day. How do you live? Everybody loves a day in the life of. And speaking of a day in the life of Main Street Vegan these days, has been that we are doing cohort 37 of Main Street Vegan Academy. And I have to tell you, it is so incredible that you might want to be thinking about getting on board for next fall. We don't have that yet on the website, but you can certainly get all the information at mainstreetvegan.com. We have had just in the past couple of weeks talking about food, the wonderful cookbook author J.L. Fields. In terms of animal rights, we've had the Our Hen House women, Jasmine Singer, Marianne Sullivan. We've had Wayne Shung, who founded DXE and is now a founder of thesimpleheart.org. He is a complete hero. He went to prison for rescuing chickens. My goodness gracious, this man is amazing. We had my health mentor, Frank Sabatino, DC PhD, talking about what I call whole food plant-based plus, all the science, but also with this wonderful extra dimension of holism. So there is a lot here. And if you want to start a business, whether it's coaching or something entrepreneurial, I don't know of a better program on earth that than Main Street Vegan Academy, and I will say that even though it's mine. And also, want to give a shout out to our sponsor for this episode, and those are the good people of Complement. Complement are supplements designed for people who eat a whole foods plant-based diet. So you're not getting a bunch of stuff you don't need, but some things that you very well might need. The URL is lovecomplement.com. And if you use the discount code Main Street, all capital letters run together, you will get yourself a 10% discount, not just on your first order, but because I'm grandfathered in, I should be grandmothered in, you get that 10% discount going forward as long as you are a Complement customer. So, Terry Chrisman, tell us about your day. What time do you get up and what do you do after that?
I have two dogs that sleep in my head, so at 7 o'clock exactly, one of them licks my face to tell me to get up. And we feed the dogs first, then we walk the dogs, and then after that, I go to the gym. So I'll be in the gym for maybe about 45 minutes to an hour. I do fluff around a bit. I need to really get that a little bit tightened up. And then after the gym, shower to get gorgeous, then have some breakfast. Today I had my oatmeal in with a straw. So it was oatmeal with berries and soy milk and flax and greens, and I blended it into a smoothie and had that for breakfast. And then I will start on work, doing my work. And my work at the moment is publicity for the book. I'm also updating my website. I'm reaching out to organizations to see if they'd like to have me as a speaker. And I'm currently making an expanded workbook. Now, in the book, I don't know if you'll be able to see this, but in the book, there are pages. Let's see if I can do this. Oh, there we go. To that background, there are pages that you can fill in. There. And for people who bought the Kindle version, you can't really fill anything in. And for people who might like the audio version, which I'm also working on, there's nothing for them to fill in. So I'm making an expanded workbook, and there might be a little quiz and maybe a few journal prompts in the actual book, but in the workbook, man, it's like a whole chapter per chapter. So
Ooh,
it's
love
like a little,
workbooks.
yeah, it's like a little course because I say this all the time. A book is useless if you don't take action, particularly a book like mine, which is trying to teach you something and trying to help you change your health. But if you just read it and put it on the shelf and you don't take action, you're not going to change your health. You might have some knowledge, but you're probably going to forget that in 5 minutes anyway. So the workbook helps you basically reinforce your knowledge and asks you to do things that you would be doing anyway in real life. So, for example, there's a chapter on nutrition labels. So in the workbook, I get you to get something out of the cupboard and dissect the nutrition label. How much fat is really in this, whatever package of whatever's you've got? And does it reflect the same thing that says on the label? Well, another spoiler alert. No, it will not. I'll take an example for you is that plant-based yogurt usually says something like it's going to be, I'll just make it easy. I'll put it in round numbers. The serving size is 100 calories, for example, and it's got 7 grams of fat in it. And you go, oh, that's not very much, right? And then it's got in a little brackets there 5%. And you're like, 5% fat, that's nothing. But I teach you how to do the math on that label, and you'll find that the yogurt with 7 grams of fat is actually 54% fat, not 5% fat. So labels are there to trick you and cause you stress. So I'm going to teach you how to read them so that you can make good, healthy decisions. So anyway, so that's what I do. I also walk the dogs 3 times a day. So 3 walks. I get distracted 15 times a day by other things going on. And then my husband and I have dinner, and usually after dinner, we just relax and watch TV with the puppies. And then, of course, before the bed, walking the dogs again.
Oh, that's what a lovely life. And I love to hear you talk about your dogs because we lost our little Rupert in late August. So sad.
Oh, I'm
And
sorry
I
to hear that.
just filled out extensive forms today about maybe adopting another precious one. And I love when you talked about the dog wakes you up in the morning and you walk the dog 3 times a day. It's like, oh, I'm ready. I am so ready to be a dog mom again. So, Terry, thank you so much. Thanks for your energy and your enthusiasm. It's one thing to have a message and have some facts, and it's another thing to just be on fire with the message, which you are. And so, no wonder the book is doing so well, and you're changing things so beautifully with your work. So, to find out more about today's wonderful guest, you can go to the show notes at mainstreetvegan.com. And while you're there, if you want to subscribe, you will get the Recipes to Help You Age Like a Yogi ebook absolutely free. And when you subscribe, you will get the Main Street Vegan weekly blog and the monthly or so newsy letter when there's something newsy to share. And on the show notes, you will see the website for Terri Chrisman, and that is fabuloushealth.net. Easy to remember because she is Fabulous Health all over everywhere. On Facebook, it's Fabulous Health TIC. Same thing.
TLC.
TLC. Oh, okay.
TLC. Yeah, they're my initials.
Oh, I see. Okay. TLC on Instagram, the same thing. But you know what? You don't have to remember all that stuff because it will be in the show notes. So thank you, Terry. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Thank you for doing such good work in the world. And everybody, thank you for listening. Be in touch. And now let's go out and make Main Street vegan.